The call came in at noon. We were up at 6 p.m. on St. Patrick's Day and ran all weekend and were successful on Wednesday. So as long as you have a relationship with your digital consultant, we'll take that call and we'll get it done.
I'm Eric Wilson, managing partner of Startup Caucus, the home of campaign tech innovation on the right. Welcome to the Business of Politics show. On this podcast, you're joining in on a conversation with entrepreneurs, operatives, and experts who make professional politics happen. Our guest today is Shannon Chatlos of Strategic Partners and Media, a full-service advertising and consulting agency based in Annapolis, Maryland. Shannon leads the firm's digital team serving clients that include political campaigns, associations, advocacy clients, and corporations. In this episode, we discuss the evolving paid media landscape online, how it's changing the way campaigns are run, and her advice for selling into the political industry. Shannon, you and I have known each other for a long time, and I know you've been in this industry before that. So you've seen a lot of changes in the media buying landscape when it comes to digital. What trends have stood out to you when it comes to digital media buying in politics?
I think one of the trends as everything has evolved is that digital is now one of the first considerations, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like when digital first became part of the media spend, it was kind of the redheaded stepchild in the back of the room.
You got whatever was left over, yeah.
Whatever was left, or a relegated 10% budget or something like that. And now I feel like one, digital is at the strategy table. Any candidate or a campaign that we work with, I'm one of the first people on the call. They don't even want to talk until I'm able to weigh in. So that's a change. That's an important change. And the other trend I would say is that, Eric, we've known each other a long time, and I the words a digital expert drives me crazy because digital changes so much that is a trend that is going to continue. It is so important that your consultant or whomever you're working with is constantly talking to vendors. So I think that's really important. If someone is looking to get involved in selling their service to us, like, we need to be listening to them because the ad tech industry just changes so much. I'd also say that data is just, it continues to be so important that you're really working with really good data.
Yeah, I think the thing that jumps out to me the most is the fragmentation, right? And all the different options. So, when this was just getting started, it was like, okay, banner ads, right? We're going to do some Google ad network buys with banner ads. And then we say, we can do social media now, and we can do pre-roll. And now we've got a dozen different streaming services that we're tracking that have significant usage from voters. And, it's just totally ballooned beyond one network or one platform.
Right. And we're seeing, the walled gardens. I think there's going to be more of those going up, not less. The programmatic platforms rely on a lot of cookies and IPs, and things are changing. And I think that you're going to see more and more entities like what Hulu's done. It's very difficult to get Hulu inventory on the exchange. So there's going to be more and more places you have to buy direct, and that's going to be a challenge, and it's just getting more and more expensive. Also, I think people who obviously make up our audiences, they spend time on a lot of different platforms. I mean, there was a time when, only a few handful of people were on Facebook or Instagram, and now, really almost everyone is, or only a few people had cut the cord. Now, either people are cord stackers or use several different streaming services. I've got a membership to all of them, right? So I just think it's going to become harder and harder to find your target audience with efficiency if you don't have a really large spend.
Yeah. So I want to go back and just explain some lingo to folks who are listening. The walled garden idea is that, if you want to buy Hulu ads, you have to go to a representative from Hulu or go to their self-serve platform if the company has one and say, I want to buy based on these parameters. Whereas with programmatic buying, you can buy across different publications, different platforms from one interface. And so with, to your point, with the data and the control and the privacy, more of these companies are saying, look, I want to control the data and get the revenue. These streaming platforms are no longer loss leaders for the big brands that run them, and that makes our job difficult as campaigners, because you have to buy across multiple platforms, and we don't necessarily always have the resources to do that. I think, one of the key findings from our post-election polling with the Center for Campaign Innovation was that you basically have voters divided into three buckets. So they're the third who, you can are only reach on TV. They're not streaming. There's the third who are only streaming. And depending on the platform, you're able to reach them with ads. And then there's that third that have the both, where you've got to reach them. And then you've got to figure out how, to your point, how do you get the frequency? It's not enough to just we're going to go out and buy Hulu. You may only get one impression per week off of Hulu, but you really need to wrap it all together. And it's just gotten so much more complex.
And it's not like one is less expensive than the other. I mean,
right.
It's you have to buy all three in order to have efficiency. So that's the challenge. The budgets are just, they're enormous.
Well, speaking of budget, the question that comes up about digital advertising, every conversation I have about this, I had this question come up earlier this week. What should my budget be? You mentioned the 10%, I'll give it an air quotes, rule that we used to have. And now some people say that's 30%. How do you start to answer that question for a client of how much money should they spend on TV versus digital, which platforms, that sort of thing?
So to me, this is a classic math problem. So I like to start with who is our target audience and how many people make up that target audience or target audiences. And then how many times we need to reach them, right? What do we think that how many times are they going to need to hear that message for us to either go on to the next message or for them to have general awareness or education? And it really depends on what the goal of the campaign is, right? So, but I'm talking in usually we're just getting started. No one knows who I am, brand ID type, name ID and brand ID. And then how much does it cost to reach them X amount of times? And does that align with the budget? Because everyone does actually have, a budget number in mind, whether they say they don't or not. And then if that's not the right number, then you need to adjust your target audience or your budget. It's that simple. So it's just a math problem. Now, which platform can we find them on? That goes back to what we were just talking about, that it's extremely difficult. That is the big question. We do everything from surveys to, Eric, some of the platforms I use, you actually can upload your audience and it sort of shows you okay, they're here. We see this is how many CTVs match that audience, or this is how many mobile devices match that audience. So then I start to know, I can reach them online. And then I also like to be sure that we're thinking about, okay, who can we not reach? Can I have the data back? That tells me that they didn't match in my programmatic system. And then I have to come up with a way to reach that audience. And that kind of gives you that 1/3 only on broadcast number, or, do we need to go knock on
or the people who are on the platforms that are not ad supported or don't allow political ads. I think the challenge, the math also varies depending on where you're advertising. So in a place like the DC media market where we live, you're probably going to have to really rely on digital. Fortunately, you've got a lot more connected TVs, a lot more streaming than you might in other parts. And so it's not a perfect one size fits all number, this idea of 30% of your budget. Yeah.
That's a really good point. And when you buy a lot of the broadcast buys, what you're watching on Hulu Live or any of your live streams, that's a broadcast buy.
Right.
So that gets very confusing too to people. They're like, oh, I don't watch, like when you're asking a poll and like you're saying, we survey folks to find out where they're getting their media from. And they think that they don't watch any broadcast TV, but they have purchased.
It turns out they do. Yeah,
they do. Exactly. So,
well, and there's always been this tension between like digital buyers and TV buyers. It's sort of this idea that TV didn't want to touch digital, and digital, was always trying to take money away from TV. And I think that, clear happened to be true. I think where we have ended up now is we need both, right? So, TV broadcast undeniably has a role, getting more expensive and reaching fewer people. Right. And so we have to supplement that with other things. And so again, going to that budget formula, you've got to do TV. Your media market may be very expensive, and your digital budget, it does not hit that 30%, so it's hard to do a formula like that. So on the political side, how would you rate Republicans' paid digital efforts in 2022? Are we where we need to be in terms of reaching the right audiences?
I see this as two different answers. So on the
all of your clients did it perfectly. Everyone who else didn't work with you.
Everyone,
is that the answer? The two prong? Okay.
Yeah. So I think to your earlier point of making sure that consultants are not fighting over budget. I mean, that is really important. We at our firm, we are integrated. So if I find that like there's a lot of success in one area, or that we really need to be up on these certain platforms that are more expensive, and I can go and say, hey guys, can we reallocate some of the TV budget, or maybe come down on the weekends and shift that to digital or whatever it is, we can have those honest conversations. So, and it's all under one roof, and that helps with, that's very helpful. Very helpful. And that's not always happening. And so, that's a problem. So and I don't think that's a Republican problem. That's just a problem. Right. And then as far as, are we reaching our target audiences? There's so much data in the programmatic platforms. I don't think people realize, like, as you're layering all this data in, and you're segmenting out, you're buying some programmatically, you're buying some direct, you're buying some on Facebook and YouTube, and so your reach and frequency is not completely transparent. So is there waste? I think there is. How do we solve that? That's up to really smart people and data scientists to help us figure out. But again, back to the walled garden problem. Do I think that's going to be an easy one to solve? No, I don't.
Right. We don't know who is who. And we had Keith Norman from Premion on the podcast a couple of weeks ago talking about OTT, CTV, and I put the question to him of who should be buying this. And he was very diplomatic about his answer. But I think you highlight one of the benefits of going with a hybrid firm that knows TV and knows digital, because it's not one or the other. Yes, the content, the creative is TV. It's being displayed on the big screen in the home. But the targeting and the metrics that you get back, it's digital. And so it really does, help to have it in one place. And you kind of avoid that tension of, well, if I shift my budgets accordingly, then my firm loses and your firm gains, kind of thing.
Right. And you also just want to be able to do it smartly. So you want, we should be sharing those metrics, and what we're seeing on an OTT platform. Like, let's imagine, your OTT completion rate was 70. Well, that means people are literally like turning off the ad. And don't you think the TV buyers would want to know that? I mean, right. Like, hey, this ad's not working, or, this ad's really, really great. Go ahead and run the 60,
right.
Like burn in the message even more. So I think all those conversations are really important. You can use the metrics to influence your broadcast buy as well. I mean, that's just doing things the right way, working together as a team and communicating.
So it's March 2023. The rest of the country is watching basketball, but that means we're getting ready for the 2024 presidential race. It's looking like another crowded primary on the Republican side. So what are some paid media tactics or strategies that you think presidential contenders will be using to stand out or differentiate themselves?
I think going local, getting more local is going to be really important. I think, paying attention to what people are talking about and running ads contextually is going to be really important. Certain communities are much more in tune with gas prices, for example, than others, or maybe in Ohio with all of the railway stuff.
Right.
Being sure that your if your ad is talking about that, can you align yourself within an article that is talking about infrastructure? Because there's lots of
Right.
them in there, right? So I think getting local and using contextual in a really smart way to make your buy more efficient is going to be something that they should be thinking about to stand out and be less cluttered, to be more relevant, right? So you're on a local pub that's talking about a local issue when you're talking about, changing up leadership. I think all that makes a lot of sense.
And not just the
Podcast,
message, but the visuals, and
yeah,
you can do
all
so
of
much
it. Yeah.
personalization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can, like, and making it, if you're talking about leadership change to voters somewhere that's, knowing what they've been going through lately is going to be really important, I think. So, so using those kind of tactics to make your ads even more personalized in an authentic way, not in like, we made 400 ads and we're going to optimize to the best performer, like really taking time to make sure that the creative stands out, I think is going to be really important. Remembering that what's old could be new again.
Right.
Teletown halls, they work really well, and people, I think the pandemic kind of changed the way that we actually appreciate longer format content sometimes now. And
Definitely.
and I think that taking time to really communicate, people are they want that. That's why I believe podcasts have become so popular, because people want to dig deep and go deep, and people appreciate that. So I think that's something that should be used.
You're listening to the Business of Politics show. I'm speaking with Shannon Chatlos, who leads Strategic Partners and Media's digital practice. Shannon, meanwhile, we've got the presidential race going on. We've got issue advocacy both at the state and federal level. What role are you seeing paid digital playing in those policy fights right now?
Yeah. So this happens, we do a lot of this actually, and it's just the ability to take action really quickly when things aren't going well, or hopefully they are going well, but more often they're calling us because they're like, all right, this bill is about to be passed or not passed, and there's these 8 legislators that are holding out. What do we do? And digital can step in and make a huge impact. Anything from like a creative that has the actual like senator that's about to vote no's face on it, that says, tell Senator, X to vote to support this bill, and put a lot of pressure on them. We've been doing, robocalls into the office. Again, like what's old is new again.
Right.
Because it's digital, we can pull the actual data file and use that to target. But we've geofenced folks' homes and blown up their neighborhood with digital ads to just their neighbors, which can be very distressing to a legislator who's needs their neighborhood support, right? So that's the kind of
So is
stuff.
the advantage with digital on that is that it's there's precision and it's quick turnaround time. Is that why it's so valuable in those contexts?
Yes, because we got a call on Friday to make a difference, that for a vote this Wednesday. The call came in at noon. We were up at 6 p.m. on St. Patrick's Day and ran all weekend and were successful on Wednesday. We also did robocalls Monday and Tuesday into the office. So, I think that is a very quick turnaround. And as long as you have a relationship with your digital consultant, we'll take that call and we'll get it done, right?
Right. Not enough time to send mail, not enough time
No,
to cut a TV
yeah,
ad and
no,
get it in rotation.
that's a really good point. So I think it's really important that, when people are looking for a digital partner, you need to ask questions like, hey, what resources do you have in house? Do you have a graphic design artist? Do you have someone that can build a landing page quickly? Like, what's your turnaround time for things? That's just that when you're interviewing your consultants, those things need to be sitting in the same room, because
Right.
otherwise you can't turn things around that fast.
So obviously with the boom around OTT, over the top and connected TV advertising, it seems like all the focus in paid digital is around video. But what are you seeing in terms of other formats and creative? You've mentioned robocalls and teletown halls already. Are there other paid formats that are important right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, not everyone can afford a video. And not everything calls for a video. And you also have to remember that if you're looking for call to action and you're trying to, drive acquisition or drive engagement on something, OTT and CTV might not be the best choice, because, you're not clicking through to a landing page as you're watching Ted Lasso. So,
Right.
I think each form of digital, the question is, what needs to happen when someone sees this ad? So I think that the format of the ad or the creative used has to ultimately be accountable to that question. So do we need people to go to a landing page to learn more and sign a petition? Do we need someone to donate? So I think that there's a place for video, and especially in that top of the funnel. But as you get through that funnel, then that's when you're going to have to use ads that engagement is easier on. Now, I am seeing a ton of QR codes on the OTT.
Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot too.
And it's nice because you can pause it, right? Like, we all know how to do that now. We know how to
Right.
pause it and snap the QR code. I did it this morning when I was watching the Today Show. So
I really like text messaging too, like
yeah.
that short code text messaging is a good bridge. So speaking of measurement, obviously one of the benefits of digital is that we can measure and track everything, sometimes to our detriment. Is there a metric that you would add that's on your wish list that you think is the most valuable insight that you could gain?
I think you and I were talking about this about a year ago, right? Like, I was saying, like, Eric, have you found anybody that can do this? But I would say competitive is one of the missing metrics.
Being able to see what other people are doing.
Exactly. Digital is still such that Facebook has their transparency platform, and Google and smart people like you have been able to put those things together into a dashboard that we can see. But I still can't see how much someone's running on a programmatic, or how much someone's running on a platform, an OTT walled garden, it makes it very hard for us to say, like, how much are they spending on OTT or CTV?
Mm-hmm. And just to contextualize that for listeners real quick, Shannon, when it comes to broadcast TV and broadcast radio, the TV stations, as part of their Federal Communications Commission license, are required to publish who's spending what are they advertising. And so and then that carries over in some extent to cable zones. And so to our friends in the TV world, they're able to go to the campaign manager, the general consultant, the candidate once a week and say, look, they're spending this much money against you, and here's what they're saying. Whereas in digital, we don't have that. Because, some of it's on Facebook, some of it's on Google, some of it's on these ad exchanges, some of it's on, name all the different platforms. And, because they're private enterprises, they're not required by the government to share that information.
Right. So that's still that's my number one wish. And, again, I think this has been the theme of this conversation we're having, but
right.
Fragmentation causes problems. And that's one of, competitive on the digital side in this super fragmented digital landscape. It's a problem. And I would love for it to be solved.
I do think, and I'm curious to hear if you agree, that ACR, the automated content recognition that we're seeing on smart TVs is starting to help, because we can know if an ad was said. Still doesn't get us, what the spend, but yeah, I think it's starting to help.
It's starting to help, but it's still, again, like, I feel like it's still very it's just fragmented. You'd have to go to so many places. It'll happen. I mean, and the other thing that's going to happen, and I'd love to, or I think it's going to happen, so I'd love to know if you think the same, is it's only a matter of time before we buy TV like we buy digital, broadcast television. I mean, it's going to change, and everything's going to move towards, the CPM and the streaming model. That's what I see.
You start to see how in the political space, how we buy ads and build plans, it's all around audiences, right? So at a certain point, from a strategic perspective, you don't care where the person is seeing the message. You just care that the right person is seeing the right message at the right moment. And so it's a little bit different in commercial advertising, by the way, because, I can buy Tide every day of the week. I can go to any store and buy Tide. It's not like, I have to vote on this day and I can only vote for these people, where the audience and where they live matters a lot. So we do have a kind of unique challenge there, but I think you're right. It's definitely, the more data, the more processing power we get, we can sort of say, look, we're buying audiences, not necessarily, there are people who still I want to buy the evening news, and that's my strategy.
Right.
It's not about the audience. That may be the right thing to buy. Don't get me wrong.
Right. That, the for consumer goods too. I mean, they can measure, marketplace attribution, and they can measure, we measure on election day.
Right.
So we don't have the benefit of seeing a lift in sales. I mean, we have our polls and we have things that can indicate the right direction, but at the end of the day, the point of sale is election day.
All right, Shannon, I don't want to let you leave without getting some advice from you. You've been a sales leader for as long as I've known you, and selling for me isn't something that comes naturally, nor is it to a lot of folks in our industry. You get into politics for some reason or another, but then you eventually find yourself in sales. What's the most impactful thing that an entrepreneur in this political industry could do to be more effective at sales?
This is a relationship business. And so I care very much if someone wants to really understand what I'm working on and take the time to learn, like, this is the campaign that I have, and what are you selling that could create solutions for me? I'm always looking for individuals that have enough political acumen that they can become a strategic advisor to me as well and make me smarter. I'm always looking for differentiation. That's the most important thing, because, I'll get, requests for meetings, but if you can quickly tell me, like, hey, you need to look at this because this does this different, or this does this better, or you're first, best, or only in a certain category, then I want to hear about it. So I think taking the time to really lead with your differentiator is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a good note to end on. With that, I'll say thanks to Shannon for a great conversation. There's a link to Strategic Partners and Media in our show notes. You can see more about their work. Get in touch with Shannon if you're interested in continuing the conversation. And if this episode made you a little bit smarter, gave you something to think about, you know that all we ask is that you share it with a friend or colleague, and you look smarter in the process. It's a win-win for everybody. Please remember to subscribe to the Business of Politics show wherever you listen to your podcasts. That way you'll never miss an episode. You can also get email updates if you want at our website, businessofpoliticspodcast.com. With that, I'll say thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.